I get itchy scrolling through endless drone listings, each one promising crystal clear 4K footage, ultralight portability, and a no registration sweet spot, but every time you finally splurge, the reality feels a lot less cinematic. You've probably bought a cheap hobby drone that looked great on the photo grid, only to find the camera wobble, the laggy app, or the constant need to chase after a dead battery. That hesitation is exactly why I'm breaking down the DJI Mini 4 Pro Fly More combo the way a real buyer would be, looking at the everyday moments it actually shines in and the spots where it still falls short. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the Mini 4 Pro is built around the idea of fly light, fly free. At just 249 grams, it sits below the 250-gram registration threshold in the US, Canada, and most European countries, which means you can toss it in a backpack and launch it without filling out paperwork. For a traveler who's hopping from one city to the next, that's a genuine time saver. I've taken it through 3 separate trips: an early morning sunrise hike in the Rockies, a bustling market in Marrakesh, and a weekend beach getaway in the Algarve. In each case, the drone slipped into my carry-on, and the only extra thing I had to worry about was swapping batteries. Speaking of batteries, the Fly More combo includes 3 intelligent flight batteries, giving you a combined 102 minutes of flight time if you plan your swaps efficiently. In practice, I'm looking at roughly 34 minutes per charge, which is generous for a drone of this class. The biggest practical benefit is the confidence you gain when you're filming a sunrise. I started a takeoff just as the first light hit the horizon. The first battery gave me enough runway to capture the sky's color shift, then I swapped in a fresh pack and kept the footage rolling for another half hour. That kind of endurance is rare in sub-250-gram drones, and it lets you treat the Mini 4 Pro more like a handheld camera than a short-burst toy. Now, let's talk about the camera itself. The Mini 4 Pro ships with a 1.3-inch sensor, which is a noticeable step up from the 2.3-inch sensors you see in older Mini models. The result is a smoother, less noisy image in low-light conditions. Think twilight cityscapes or indoor events with modest lighting. The autofocus is quick and reliable. I never had to pause a shot because the lens was hunting. When I filmed a low-light concert in a small venue, the drone managed to keep the subject sharp while the background retained a pleasant bokeh, something the Mini 2 would have struggled with. The 4K 60 frames per second video feels buttery, and the built-in 3-axis stabilization holds up even when I was battling a moderate breeze, around 12 miles per hour. The footage stays level, which means less time in post-production correcting shaky clips. One area that often trips up beginners is the menu system. DJI's OcuSync 3.0 transmission paired with the new RC2 controller means you're not relying on a smartphone screen for live view. The controller has its own bright display and dedicated buttons for common functions. The interface is clean, but there are still several layers of menus for things like intelligent flight modes, custom camera settings, and safety parameters. If you've never flown a drone, you'll spend your first 20 minutes just learning where, return to home lives and how to toggle spotlight tracking. That said, the learning curve isn't steep. Once you get past the initial menu navigation, the controller feels intuitive, and the smart return to home feature works reliably when the signal drops or the battery hits the low power threshold. Obstacle avoidance is another practical consideration. The Mini 4 Pro adds forward and backward sensors compared to the Mini 2, which gives you basic forward-looking avoidance and helps when you're flying in tight spaces like narrow alleys or indoor events. However, it still lacks the comprehensive omnidirectional sensing found on the Mavic Air 2 or the Air 2S. In a real-world scenario, I was flying through a wooded trail and had to manually steer clear.